So we do have a few unplanned things here, but that's the problem. Every time the soil is not conducive to electricity, things don't go as planned. And it will continue to be so until we have some proper fencing and not just these wires. And all the while we have issues and need to repair and replace things. And that's just the way it is. There is nothing we can really do except just moving along and step by step building up the system. You can see a lot of that has been destroyed, and what we are doing now is we take them to a different place. The different place is going to be CT1, because there we have proper fencing and a lot more control, and they respect that more than just these wires. Now we have the supplemental feed in the truck, and they will hopefully just follow the truck. And it looks like they have figured it out. The truck isn't moving, but they think, oh, we need to go there, because Angel has an empty bag. And that is enough to lure them out. Eventually it works, and it is a hassle that we have to endure for a while, but this is the reality in a very dry land. Of course, people from lands where it is moist all the time say, yeah, why don't you install proper fencing? Well, this is proper fencing, but there is a reason why around here nobody except us has electric fencing, because in summer it does not work. So there's a lot more effort required to make it work. And if building fences is the only thing that you do, being a contractor for fencing, well, yes, maybe this would be different. But there's more to do. And in the end, the goal is not to build fences, but do the other things. So this is just a temporary hassle. And it's still hot and dry. You can hear this from my breathing. So just enjoy the show and the struggle. Someone else is struggling, not you. And eventually we have proper physical fence with some electric elements, and that is the place where we are taking them to, because there in City 1 nobody broke out or in, since we have configured this in a way that it works. So the metal pieces are the negative pole, and they are connected to the energizer, and then there are a few wires, only 3 the white band and 2 strings, and that gives the full voltage, a little bit more than 10,000 volt, and that sends the message. And also it prevents the animal from trying to push through, because the animal will be shocked multiple times in doing so. So that's the way to do it, and we will do this in all the places where we will plant now, and eventually the whole place is going to look like that. There also seems to be a psychological element. They are not stupid. So they got to taste some green, and after that went out to look for more green. Also, there isn't much around. But this looking for more green created the problem, because now they are not interested in bale grazing anymore. They still want the supplemental feed because it's sweet, but the bales they ignore and they look for the green stuff. And interestingly enough, there's quite a bit. So that Cynodon in all the different places, they discovered it and they fed on it, which is positive. Now the grass has been bitten off. They are gone, because they will be in there. And the Cynodon can regrow while it is still the right temperature. So it's not a bad thing. And few fence posts and wires can be replaced. Electric fencing is temporary, so it doesn't really matter, and that is why it is also cheap, because it's temporary. They all pick up the pace because Angel is distributing the supplemental feed. So now everybody is in there and we can close the gate, and that is where they will stay until we have green forage, which is a few weeks away depending on when the rain comes. We also just noticed something. The mixed breed cows are in much better body shape than the so-called limousine ones. So the ones from the bad neighbor, who basically did everything in the way as it happens, without selecting much, and let them roam and all this, they are much more adapted and convert mediocre food or just the grass much better into body mass than the so-called purebreds ones. So I would assume that genetics is more to be grain fed and grain finished in a feedlot or another type of feeding operation, while the others are more for grass fed and grass finished. So this is quite interesting. Of course, here we have the one with the hole in the back, so she also looks like that. But it looks like this is getting a little bit better. I don't see that much red flesh. Of course, the problem with the flies is still there. We certainly need to reapply the medicine that we have, that spray. But she's also teaching her calf. So this little bull here. So she definitely takes care of her young. So she's very strong. So this is quite interesting. So the genetics apparently has a lot to say about if a cow can survive in this environment and prosper, or if this is a problem. Thinking about that. An update on this experimental patch. Things are growing tall. There is no tree sticking out, but instead the tallest ones is the corn. Here we have one of the trees. The leaf color is pretty nice, so this tree does not have any issue. but it is not tall. Question is why that is, but it might also be that it's simply too late in the season. In here there is another one. The leaf color is okay, but the leaves are tiny. So it might well be that this tree is making roots instead of trying to grow up. And we will then see them in spring. In places like this edge here, the Palovnia trees have bigger leaves. And there, for example, there is another one. They are in there, but I think they are not trying to get ahead. I don't think that they will be completely shaded out and die, but there is a possibility that all the other plants will simply win, but they are annual, while the tree is for a much longer period of time. So it might well be that the tree is focusing on making roots when there is no other point in making leaves. But then on the other hand, photosynthesis does require sunlight and therefore leaves. So I have some doubts. I'm not really sure what is going on here. But there's only one way to find out, and that is to wait and see how this turns out. That's why we are doing this. And later, when the annual plants, the corn, the sunhemp, the sunflowers, the okra, when they have died off, then we will know for sure what has happened. So I keep you guys posted, and we will see, probably in November, what's the situation. Here in this patch, I did cut a little bit all the stuff that is growing around the trees, in order to get some biomass onto the ground. We are also expecting a little bit of rain, but we will see. And it already grew back quite well. There is some Bermudagrass in there, and my idea was to feed the soil. So this probably needs to be done again, but then it should probably grow a little bit taller before we start cutting, and then this gets repeated. Of course, this stuff is so dense that the Bermudagrass might not receive enough light. That is always my worry, that the plants are shading out each other. But on the other hand, supposedly they struggle for the light and therefore grow taller. So I am observing, I am learning about these things, and you can follow along. So I do see Bermudagrass in there. So, and some of them are also coming up on top in some pieces, in some places there. So this is the beginning of our restructuring of this place here, in order to get it prepped for the rain. And for next fall or autumn, you will see us planting a Miyawaki forest here in this area. And this is the preparation, the very beginning of that. These marked areas become little depressions in the soil in order to retain moisture a little bit. They will be planted with trees later on, but for now this is just a scratch in the ground so that the water stays a little bit longer there. And the next step, we will see the pigs in here to finish this and smoothen the edges out and distribute the material a little bit more. They will also integrate all this old straw. What you see here is a whole truckload. But before we let them in, we have to fence this area, that it's pig safe and nobody gets in or out. This is how it's going to look like. The berm there to the left is still steep, but with the help of the pigs, that will then be solved. We can use them instead of diesel, and they probably also do a better job once this area is moist. And what I can also say is, for this autumn, we plan to loosen up this soil here a little bit by using the excavator and then plant a number of shrubs in here so that we get this forest thing going. And 1 year later, unfortunately prepping takes some time, we will then plant in this area. Check out Kaimito EU, the project page. There is a description of what is supposed to happen when. We also noticed that the soil in here is definitely a lot softer than elsewhere. So apparently all the activity by the bovines and one time the pigs did help, but of course it is dry and you can see the dust. But that soil is definitely improved. This has turned into really good soil. It is loose. It is also a little bit deeper than it used to be. So this is very positive. And this is just by having the animals here. And the way I can walk, it's also soft. It's very different than it used to be. So this definitely works. The vetiver in here is also growing. The bovines have been added, but being a grass, it just comes back. Of course, now that we will have the pigs in this area, there will be a proper fence instead of these wires. What is also interesting is that there's a lot of Bermudagrass, the Synodon, which is also creating its foothold here. It all comes together. Now there at the edge in the sunlight, this can be seen pretty clear that it's green. Of course this is not yet forage, but it will be eventually. So we will continue to make depressions in the soil and a few high spots so that water can accumulate and infiltrate from there. And the pigs will then help to make it even, to create a natural looking shape. The same thing you can find in forest. And we just help nature a little bit with the machine. And then this area will be transformed. I should also mention one thing. We had been talking about chicken. And yes, there will be chicken, but in a totally different way. So we are not going to use chicken tractors and all that. But instead we decided to make these Miyawaki forests. And once they are tall enough so that chicken can live underneath, then we will use these as a very huge chicken tractor and basically let the forest animal, chicken and all the other birds that live in a similar way, those that lay their eggs on the ground and make nests on the ground, we will then allow them to live in a forest the same way as they originally did before humans took them and put them in a chicken coop. So we basically built them a natural chicken coop with a natural roof made out of leaves of all the trees, and that should give them some protection from predators. And ground predators we will keep out with a proper fence that is also a visual barrier so that the animal cannot see what's on the other side, plus some electric element. So when the fox comes, we want to make sure that the fox will be shocked and runs away instead of trying to get through. You will see how this goes and also whether it will fail or it will actually work. But at least that's the plan. So this is here the first area. We have another one That is C1, C2. In there we will do a similar thing. But this area is very nice because all the infrastructure is there and the helpers are already on site. So once this is fenced in, they will move, and by then it should also be moist, or we will use the sprinklers to make it moist area by area, so that all this material, and as I mentioned before, all this old straw will be incorporated into the soil, and then we seed for a harvest sometime late November, mid-December, so that the same pigs can harvest what they helped to seed. And later we let grow whatever wants to grow over winter, and for spring we repeat this with things that grow well in springtime. We thought about the sun hemp, sunflowers and all the other stuff, including some roots, so that bovines and pigs can have a harvest at the end of spring. And then we continue to do this for summer with a slightly different mix, and then when autumn comes around we will start planting a lot of trees. 1500 trees per 1000 square meters. We will see how many we can actually manage to plant, but with some luck we can plant this whole thing. This is some 6000 square meters in total. You can see the markings. This will be a slightly deeper depression, so a shallow pond, not deeper than a meter. It should hold the water a little bit and help to distribute it. Here is already a little channel. This is where the water flows in that direction when it rains. So we basically move the material from there to here, so that it stays here instead of accumulating down there in the animal lane like it did in the past. In here there was enough forage for the whole herd to stay for a while. And if you look closely you can see that it's a little bit greenish. That is all the Bermudagrass. So they did forage on that, and also on the old standing hay, and left a lot of manure, which is very positive. So we did graze in here during summer. And the same did happen here on the other side. So they also grazed here. Of course they did self-admit, because we again have issues with our electric fencing, but that is what happens in summer, until we have it all plus minus physical and electric fence. But it did work, that they found some food here, so that is the most important part. The fencing is always something that can be repaired, and eventually it will be perfect, but we are not building fences. We are trying to work on the other part, and the fence is just a tool. Of course they also did bite off the vetiver here, but being a grass, it actually does it good, so there's no harm. Of course the soil was soft and the hooves did some damage, and maybe one or another plant got ripped out, but this is not a huge problem. And now that I'm here, I just remember, you guys keep writing me comments and kind of insist that we should add more elements here to stop the water from flowing down. There is no slope. The slope is extremely slight, so this is mostly flat here. And sure, you could add a few things here, but as it's not flowing, there is not that much of a point to add things here. So there is a lot of other things that need doing, and this is the least of our problems. Of course, if you know other terrains where there's a lot of water flowing off, yes, of course, this is certainly something you would focus on. But you see, I just did a few steps and I'm already here at that curve, and I will now go through that fence and go on the other side. So in the past, when it did rain a lot and water came from above, which it won't, because we are modifying things there also, or have modified, then yes, yeah, we had something rushing here, but it was mostly rushing down because it came from there, went against these, then because the foot was here, we had a wave going up, splashing down there, and then it went away. So maybe I can show you the slope. So I'm now in here and I'm crouching down. So that is basically how this is. This is really not something that you would definitely have to stop the water flow, because there's none. And let's go through here. So I am walking inside of that creek bed, and again you see how this looks like. This is not that washed out as you might expect, and just a few meters more and we are at that wall, and that is where our world ends. And whatever happens on the other side is not something where we can actually do anything about it, because the land on the other side is not ours, and the people who use it, who own it, they have a different perception of things. So this is where we end. And in the case that there is heavy rainfall, which might this time, then it comes from there. So the rain event that will then cause water rushing down here needs to be pronounced and for enough duration, and the catchment area is all that, and also the higher parts, and some of that is on our piece. So it's basically when you go up there and it goes up. But there we are modifying, have modified and will be modifying more. So eventually this will be the only catchment area. And this will also hold it a little bit. And as you can see, it did something here when it was very, very heavy and we were not here. So this is from before. And sure, we could spend time doing things here. Leaky weirs and all this. Yeah, beaver dam equivalents. These are all very good ideas. So I very much appreciate that. But it is, for the time being, not the most important thing. And it will definitely not have the effect that some of you guys are hoping for, because look at this. This area gets a lot of water flowing down from that hill, which is why this has been from the start the best paddock, because underneath that wall the water goes through and it comes from there. So this gets soaked when there is enough water. And that creek does not really contribute to that much. And also, it is lower. Because you see, there it goes up. So even if we did dam a little bit here, but then would you dam every 5 meters? So 5 meters would mean there, then there, and then another one there. and there's hardly any flow most of the time. So only in a very, very severe rain event, and we had this in all these years one time. Well, all these years, since 2018, so it's not that much. But we had it one time. I have it on video, but this was mostly because here, this was higher, and we lowered it, and since then there was no water. So instead, what we like to do, we like to plant a lot of trees and all the vetiver. Unfortunately, during the summer there were some issues and it did not happen the way I was hoping for. But this will come, and I think then we have done enough. And again, this is from the past, and now the situation is different. So I hope you will understand that putting in a lot of features here has not really changed the situation. It would be nice for a workshop, a project, to show how this can be done, but it's not really what helps this project as a whole. There is a lot more things where we got a lot more bang for the buck than by adding a few things here. More plants will definitely help, and that is something we started to do and continue doing.